I've hit the record button. The podcast has begun.
Oh no.
Okay. Can you hear me typing? Should I stop
Yes,
writing?
I can hear you typing.
Okay. Damn it.
Yes, I can hear you typing. Jamie doesn't have his headphones on.
Okay, I'm going to keep typing until he puts
It's
them on.
all right. What we'll do is we'll cut this and it'll be a clever meta introduction to the podcast. Hello, welcome to the Cine Skinny. That's right, we've just started the podcast.
Okay, do I have to stop typing?
Um,
All right.
More importantly, stop talk about typing. That's ruining the audio.
yeah. Yeah, you might get away with it if you just type silently, but the fact that you keep drawing attention to it.
All right, on you go.
Hello, welcome to the Cine Skinny. Things are going about as well as it sounds. It's the film podcast from the incredibly professional team behind the Skinny magazine. We are back at EIFF at Summerhall because it's time for the Edinburgh festivals, a big thing that happens in Edinburgh once a year. Isn't that right? Everyone's nodding. They're not really. That was just...
I was nodding.
You were nodding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you said that we were nodding, I don't want you to be a liar.
An idiot maybe, but a liar never. So yeah, we're back at EIFM recording a very special preview episode for this year's Edinburgh International Film Festival, which runs from the 18th to the 23rd of August. 18th to the 23rd of August. So EIFF is back under new auspices, which is very fun. It's smaller, and Jamie, it's moved. Why's that happened, and where's it moved to?
Well, part of it is because we no longer have, unfortunately, the Film House, which was a big, had traditionally been the headquarters for the festival, was where everyone was based. It was kind of the hub for the festival. So it's going to be quite strange this year having in-life or in-person festival not at Film House. That'll be a bit sad. So hopefully somebody addresses that somewhere. Hopefully, maybe there can be chats about the Film House and how that could maybe be brought back. Hopefully that's going to be part of the festival. I think it might be actually in the Linda Miles section, which is going to be talking about it's an event at the festival which is going to be talking about the culture of Edinburgh and how it survives in the future. So that could be something that's worth discussing with people. But yeah, otherwise it's going to be interesting. It's going to be over in the east of the city. Is that right? Have I got my directions right?
It is going to be next, yes, like kind of east of the city centre. It's going to be adjacent to the St. James Quarter.
Yeah, so...
the shopping centre that has somehow got itself to be named a quarter of Edinburgh.
So it's like, so you're going to be doing that little rat run between Leith Street. So you're going to be jumping from like the View to Everyman. That's where the screens are going to be. So it's going to be quite contained. Hopefully the festival can create a kind of atmosphere around that area. I'm really hoping that. And, Everyman is a nice cinema, so it's going to be a nice place to hang out. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that works.
The view at the Omni is all right, but the street food bit downstairs, while a bit over-designed, is very good for between screening things. So it will be very funny to watch people who've just come out of like quite arty left field films going downstairs and just absolutely powering through big piles of fried chicken.
Oh, the fried chicken is good though.
In front of an enormous mural of a cartoon crocodile.
Now, Peter,
that's festival culture.
Maybe you can suggest a good hub for the festival, Peter. Where do people are going to go to drink and talk about, where are the good pubs in that area?
Well...
The street? The basement? Where are we going to go?
I think...
The street?
The street's good.
Like the actual street?
The bar called the street.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, just take some tennies into the street.
Pavements.
It's legal.
Well, before the gala screening of After Sun last year, we went to the basement. No, we didn't. We went to the basement or the outhouse. One of the two. I can't remember which one. The one that has the beer garden through the back.
That might be the outhouse.
Outhouse. Very nice beer garden. Go there. Joseph Pierce's is all right, but I find it's gone a little bit downhill recently.
There was a really hot waiter at Joseph Pierce's that I met like the day before lockdown. And then I could never go back.
Oh, this is like a romantic comedy. Like the start of Me Too.
But also,
he's now unemployed.
I was
he
going to
lost
say,
his job.
Yeah, a waiter that you met the day before lockdown started. You know what? He's definitely going to be doing the same job as he was back then. Famously, hospitality fared great during the lockdown, and everything stayed exactly the same. I don't know where you could really go to the pub round there.
We'll work it out. It will happen organically. People will work out where to
It'll
go.
have to happen organically on this podcast as well, because I haven't prepared anything. So if I just start shouting out the names of pubs between the chat about films, then just
start typing.
I am Googling Leith Street to remember.
There's that weird Arthur Conan Doyle pub. I've never actually been in there. Is
that looks like such a bad vibe.
I think it's just like a kind of chain pub.
Okay, so not there.
This is a real podcast by professional film writers.
This could be for the next 40 minutes, just talking about where we can have a pint after the films.
I mean, there's fewer films to do it after, though, because it is a smaller program.
Oh, he is trying to get us on track.
Point out that they're trying to put you back on track. Laugh loudly. Continue.
It is a smaller festival, you're right. But then I think actually the quality of it is so much better because there is no room for any bad film.
It feels like there's no filler in there.
There's no filler at all.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I was really excited when they announced the program. It was so much stuff that I'd wanted to see. So much like stuff that was really buzzy out of like Sundance, out of Cannes as well, right?
I think there's a few Berlin titles. I think
Berlin, maybe that's what I'm thinking of, yeah. But just like really exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's a nice balance of stuff as well. And I actually think the retrospective stuff looks really good as well. Like the older films look excellent. They have kind of lucked out a little bit in that, you know, films, the kind of buzzy films that are coming out in September this year. So like films like Afire and Passages and Past Lives, like you know, so it's very good timing for the festival actually. So hopefully, you know, maybe August is going to work out to be quite a good time for getting movies. It hasn't been in the past, but I think this year it's kind of definitely worked that way.
Yeah, and they're doing some interesting stuff with classic film festival type things. So they're doing an open air screening program, but instead of it being in St Andrews Square where everyone just watches Paddington again and then goes home when it starts raining, it's now at the Old College Quad, and it's a mixture of like, they're doing partnered things with like Alchemy and with Hippodrome Silent Film Festival, and they're doing various weird and cool things, which are good to see.
That's
and also
really lovely.
the tickets for everything are cheaper than they have been in the past.
That is key. I think you're noticing actually a lot of the screens have sold out already, and I think very noticeably last year there was fewer screens sold out. So I think the lower ticket price and just the really good quality of the program is making a difference.
Yeah, because what they did last year in what I would describe as a bold move was said that you could have cheaper tickets as long as you bought them like 8 at a time.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it's like, but there are not 8 films I want to see. So.
Yeah,
that was lunatic.
and it's August and everyone was booked up to do other things anyway.
Yeah.
So
catch you on the flip side. And then we almost didn't catch them on the flip side, but then they managed to catch us on the flip side.
Yeah. So it's looking good.
Well, let's find out. So we're going to talk about 4 films from the programme. They all begin with F or F sounds. It turns out we realised in the office.
Apart from one which does not begin with an F.
Well,
this may or may not be why we picked these 4 films.
Agree to disagree. So yeah, we've got 4 films from across the programme to talk about, and we're going to kind of split duty on this because we were all very busy last week making a 120-page issue of the magazine and didn't have time to watch 4 films each.
Oh,
Sue
God,
us.
No.
If you try and sue us, you won't win. Anyway, first film we're going to talk about in typical idiosyncratic Cine Skinny fashion is the closing film of EIFF, which is Fremont, which is the new film from British Iranian director Babak Jalali. Is it Jalali or Jalali?
Oh, you did it.
Is it
Jalali?
Jalali like Galilee?
Yeah, so the emphasis is always on the last syllable.
Okay. Jalali.
Jalali.
Babak Jalali.
Yeah.
I did it. And it stars Anita Walizadeh, who is an Afghan journalist, and Greg Turkington off of Tim Heidecker's On Cinema at the Cinema thing, and Jeremy Allen White from The Bear is also in it. Very briefly. But what is it? I realised I read the second half of the synopsis before the first half. So, Donya is a young Afghan woman who worked as a translator for the US Army during the war in Afghanistan and is now trying to build a new life in California, working in a fortune cookie factory and living in Fremont, which has, I believe, the largest Afghan population of anywhere in the United States.
Yeah.
So it is a kind of like story of somebody trying to adapt to a new life in a place that they don't have much connection to and trying to find different ways to like break through that kind of veil of not knowing where you are, who the people around you are, and trying to adapt to the life that you're now in. Reminded me a lot of Limbo in terms of like themes and delivery. But Anna, he said, with a leading question to allow you to say some things about Fremont, a bit more minimal and a bit more internal. than
Yeah.
Limbo, I thought.
Yeah, and I think maybe a bit less obviously funny, or like less kind of, I think a lot of what like Limbo did was its kind of humor was really like wrapped up on almost like its formalistic qualities of like the camera not moving. And this has like a tiny bit more fluidity to it. It really reminds me of, and it's been like compared a lot to like Jim Jarmusch. So that kind of sense of absurdity, of like kind of slow monotony, which actually really works for this film because it's like a very beautiful mood piece on kind of ideas of like loneliness and guilt, which are quite like absurd ways of being, like that kind of sense of isolation, that sense that you're kind of trapped in time and that you can't like move forward. And it's like a really like interesting way to approach this, which isn't through this kind of lens of trauma, which is often how we kind of explore immigrant stories, but there is kind of thinking about what does it mean to kind of feel like you are chronically stuck and that there is kind of no way out of that because the conditions of your existence now just like lead to you being stuck. And you see this in all kinds of ways. This comes out in her life. She has this like chronic insomnia, which is what leads her to Greg Turkington. She just wants sleeping pills to be able to go to sleep. And they have like this really funny, sweet dynamic where he keeps trying to compare her life to like Call of the Wild. And she's like, can you just give me some pills? And it's just like charming. It's sweet.
He's obsessed with he's obsessed with White Fang initially, the Jack London book, and he has an incredible line where he just says, "Guess which immigrant hero I love the most," and then pauses for what must be about 4 or 5 seconds. He's one of these. I think the thing about his character is he initially seems like he's just being a weird, out of touch psychiatrist, but actually it's revealed that he has worked with a lot of people who have come from Afghanistan or who were involved in things like what Donya was involved in, like translation for an army that comes to where you are and then you move off, and how do you feel about that afterwards?
Yeah, for sure.
So his weird idiosyncratic methods kind of work?
They kind of work. And yeah, I think the film like really does accrue significance when you realize that Fremont is the place that has the largest like Afghan American population. And they've been coming for ages. They've been coming since like the 1979 Soviet invasion. And there are all these waves. And I think a really interesting thing about this film is it was ready to shoot before the pandemic. And then the pandemic happened and it got shot last year, I think. And obviously in that intervening period, the Taliban took over Afghanistan. And so there are kind of tweaks to the film and to her story that kind of make it clear that she has come over since, like part of the kind of wave of refugees that came over after the Taliban regained power. But just, the sense that it is like this ongoing process for so many people. There isn't just this one point of crisis. It is ongoing crisis. And just her like guilt about it, that like she has worked for the army, the US Army, but what do you do in that situation when there are no other jobs, when I think the US Army just like took over everything? It just like grapples with these questions in a really interesting way, I think. And it has a lot of compassion. I think it's very telling that in this film, when bad things happen, they happen because someone is just being slightly unkind. And I thought that was really, just a really beautiful way of doing it, because it just brings out like the compassion that these characters have. So her boss at the fortune cookie factory is like really kind to her. There's like the bear that she meets, like Jeremy Allen White's character. Like he's kind of a dumb bitch. Like he's like a white like man, really. Like he's kind of like, oh, are there loads of you like Afghanistanis? Hey. Sorry, babe. But like, am I wrong? Like, he's like saying all this stuff, but it's not coming from a mean place. And it is about like how you find connection even across these points of like friction. And just a film that really centers compassion and that thinks about these kind of very like difficult points with like a kind of overwhelming sense of like warmth, which I just really liked it. I thought it was really lovely.
It is really good. It is very, like I said at the start, it's quite minimal. And it's really quiet as well, actually. Like, it's very minimal kind of like soundtrack. There's a lot of jazzy woodwind and oud. The classic combo, two great tastes that go great together. But yeah, it is, it's quite a minimal and quite like internal, comparatively slow film. I'm surprised. It's a weird choice of closing film, if you ask me.
Yeah,
in terms of like, let's go for a party.
But After Yang was also quite like intense.
Yeah, well, maybe that's just how they do it in film festival. Maybe just
films are like sad.
Maybe films are sad. Who'd have thunk it? But yeah, it is like, it's funny and kind of insightful and interesting and looks amazing. it's a good fun time.
Yeah, she is great as well. I was watching like interviews with her, and she was a journalist that came over after I think the Taliban regained power. She didn't speak much English, much like me. She didn't.
But who's to judge? That's the thing.
Didn't speak much English when she kind of first came over, and they were like auditioning her and helping her with. And I just think, yeah, there's something. It's just like really. I think he's made something very special and very like kind of small but important.
So Fremont is on the 23rd of August at The View at 7:45. So that's Fremont. Very good. Go and see it.
The most interesting thing about Fremont is that we can't stop saying it in a French accent.
Fremont.
We've had this
2 seconds for Fremont, please.
There's been, yeah, so many back and forths of like Bonjour, je voudrais un billet pour le film Fremont. Avec l'homme parle on cinema at the cinema. You're always having fun when you're saying French. Right. Who's next? Oh, well, actually, French, good segue. Accidentally, brilliant segue into Femme.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is the next film we're going to talk about.
Is that French?
Well, it's a French word.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's a French word. It shows up in English words as well.
Yeah,
but
things continue to be going well.
Do you not have a degree in French?
I do, but the film isn't in French. That's the point I'm trying to make. Also, it would be Femme, actually, not Femme. So Femme is English.
Okay.
I think you'll find.
Anahit has a degree in French, and we're all professional journalists. So Femme, Jules, who's played by Nathan Stewart Jarrett, is a super confident young gay man from London who performs as a drag queen named Aphrodite. All his confidence and joy is rocked one night when he's out buying some cigarettes after a show, still in drag, and is beaten up by a homophobic thug called Preston, who's played by George Mackay. And then months later, Jules sees Preston at a gay sauna and quickly realizes that he has the ideal opportunity to get a bit of revenge. Lewis and Jamie, you both watched this. I'll go to you, Jamie, first. What did you think of this film?
Yeah, I was really impressed with this. It's a debut film from Sam Freeman and Ng Chung Ping. And yeah, it's just a really dark, just twisted noir that is playing with gender, but it's also playing with genre as well. So the plot is quite familiar. It's like basically, like you're saying, like a revenge thriller mixed with a kind of sleeping with the enemy story. And, these are plots we've seen a million times before, but what makes Femme feel fresh, I think, is that, just simply because it's a psychological thriller based on, or centred on gay men, which I haven't really seen before. So it's a kind of film I don't want to say too much about for fear of just spoiling it, but initially the film seems to be about gay trauma and about homophobia, which is, again, is something that's familiar to LGBT cinema. But as it goes along, it just becomes really kind of thorny, and it asks some really interesting questions about kind of toxic masculinity, about like the performance of gender, which I think makes it a kind of much more kind of current film and much more kind of, maybe a kind of a broader appeal as well. So yeah, like I said, I don't want to spoil stuff, but Jules and Preston, they begin this really kind of fucked up relationship, which initially, is just them meeting for passionless sex that usually ends with Jules being humiliated. But the roles between the men, just slowly and subtly shift through each meeting. And like I said, the film explores what it means to be masc and femme. And Jules, he has to at times put on a kind of more masculine sort of broy performance in front of Preston's friends. And it's interesting, just like, as a performance by these actors, how easily, because you've got actors who are acting as characters who are acting in the film, which is always really interesting to watch because you can see really how good actors are. Like actors who perform acting, you can see actually how they're very clearly showing two things happening at once, which is just really interesting, I think.
It is always very impressive to watch good, bad acting. Someone who can act convincingly as somebody who doesn't know how to act.
Yeah.
Well, this is an actor acting well as something he is not, but you can see the layers. If that
acting
makes sense.
enough that we can all tell that this is in character acting by the actor who is acting as the character who is acting.
Yes, it's Russian dolls. Lots of Russian dolls going on, but it makes it incredibly tense because he's putting on this performance. So will he get away with it? And then there's also the question of will he slip and sort of accidentally out Preston. So he has this kind of power. It's this power shift, essentially. So he has all the power over Preston. He knows his secret, and once he knows his secret, he can do with it what he will. So there's two tensions going on. Will something happen to Jules because he's lying, and will something happen to Preston because Jules holds his secrets? So it's like, I thought it was a nail biter. Really, really tense. It looks fantastic. London has really looked better. It's like, it's all sort of rainy and sort of neon lit. It's like a lot of sort of nighttime scenes. It looks really cool, looks really impressive. Reminds me a little bit of like a Michael Mann sort of shoot. That's the kind of vibe I was getting. I actually interviewed the directors and they mentioned that the influence was Good Time. So I wouldn't say it's similar to Good Time in terms of its content, but in terms of its style, I think that's actually quite a good comparison. Sort of like, edge of your seat, like you can't breathe during some scenes, and it just looks great.
Yeah, I think it's doing like the whole thriller thing really, really well, particularly from like a tonal standpoint. Like you said, a lot of it occurs at night, loads of neon lights, but also we have these characters who have fragmented identities and they're sort of like putting on these big performances as people that they're not. And that's very key to, I think, like the noir genre. But it's like, other than a tone thing, it's a script thing too, right? Like going in, you know the synopsis, you understand that this is going to be about an exchange of violence. You're going to watch people getting hurt, both physically and sort of mentally. And you might go in with a good idea of who's going to get hurt in what way, but I was so not expecting the different characters to bring out such an emotional response in me. I mean, we've already talked about like Nathan Stewart Jarrett, who I'll always remember as Curtis from Misfits, who's fantastic in that. I also saw him in a National Theatre Live performance in Angels in America as Belize, and he has this great energy throughout. He has all this confidence that is very believable for someone who would enact this unbelievably elaborate and somewhat sadistic revenge plot, but at the same time, he is very convincingly out of water when he's surrounded by aggressive straight men. And then on the other hand, you have George Mackay, who, like, has the sort of weedy guy from 1917, like the wallflower from Pride, and he's the exact opposite from how you've ever seen him. He's such a good actor. He totally falls into it. But yeah, it gives you this, like, I was surprised by how much I was like entangled in their like completely destructive relationship. I would say that, like it kind of, this is one of those circumstances where I'm really annoyed at how we can't talk about the spoilers, because the ending of this film left me so distraught. I was so on the edge of my seat. I was really wondering where it was going to go. I wouldn't have been able to predict it. And then I had to like go around town the rest of the day with this film in my head, being like, oh my God, I'm like emotionally wrecked by it. So yeah, I think that like from a tonal standpoint and also from like the performances, the script, it's just like it's just a real roller coaster. And like you say, it manages to do that whilst bringing forward all these really interesting questions about queerness, like, how discretion has been historically an object to queer joy, but here where we're trying to entrap someone, it's now an object to queer vengeance. And it's like, under what circumstances is it okay to try and expose a closeted gay man? Is it because he's an immediate danger to other gay men? And that's the thing, is like the film really encourages you to think carefully about these things and draw your own conclusions. I wouldn't say that it definitively sets camp in either answer, but I do think that it's like a level of queer discourse that I've not seen in films in a really, really long time.
Yeah, and it could easily have just made Preston a monster, but what's interesting is how it says everyone is subject. Is actually kind of similar to Barbie in that way, that Barbie is about how both men and women are sort of subject to the patriarchy. This is also saying that mass guys, femme guys, straight guys, gay guys are also subject to the patriarchy and have to kind of fit within these like predefined spaces. And yeah, it really plays with that really well. And yeah, I think George Mackay does a great job of both being terrifying, like very aggressive and tough, but there is a kind of softness, and that might just be because I know him for things like Pride and his other roles where he is a bit more softer. So yeah, I think he's doing a kind of great thing. But again, like I say, everyone's sort of working on these levels where they're all playing roles, and that's what's fascinating about the film.
It's like an elevated performance from George Mackay, where the entire time he has this really aggressive, hyper masculine, like defensive attitude, really scary. Like you say, he conduct this horrible violence against people, and yet you can still get the idea that he is somewhat mentally trapped somewhere, that he's like living a life he doesn't want to lead, or is, you know, like that Nathan Stewart Jarrett's character has some kind of an impact on him where he begins to reconsider things. And that's what makes it so like emotionally tense, because you realize not just is this revenge plot progressing nicely, but like the characters themselves are being changed by it. So
Femme is on Sunday the 20th of August at the Everyman at 8:45, and it's also on the Monday afternoon at 3:30 at the Omni. I hear from these two that it's very, very good. So you should go and check it out. That's 2 for 2 so far. Things are going well.
They are going well.
Let's see if it keeps up.
Well, let's see if it does keep up.
I've seen Peter's notes.
We're professional film journalists. So, third film, Variety. Bette Gordon from 1983, and this is screening as part of the EIFF retrospective strand. So, it follows a New Yorker called Christine, who's played by Sandy McLeod, completely broke and out of desperation takes a job at a Times Square porn theatre to help pay the bills. Quickly, she becomes fascinated by this place, the films, and the clientele, and particularly becomes obsessed with one of Variety's patrons and begins following him around New York on his mysterious business errands. I didn't write that. Is that a euphemism or?
No,
I haven't,
it is,
I
like,
have,
literally.
Oh, okay. I haven't
mysterious.
seen this film, but Anna Heat has.
I have.
What did you think of it? And its mysterious business errands.
I actually have a lot of thoughts on the mysterious business errands. Yeah, I thought this was really atmospheric and very beautiful and like weird and grimy and interesting. Like it felt like a very like frictiony film. I feel when I was very little, there were all of these films about like how seedy and grim New York was. And I actually couldn't tell you what a single one of them was called, but that was just like the overwhelming impression I had. Oops, sorry. I knocked a spring. Should I stop that again?
I think you just carry on.
Okay.
I knocked the string sounds like a euphemism as well.
For what? Anyway, I couldn't tell you what any of them were called, but it was just like this overwhelming impression I had. And then New York got gentrified, and it just felt like things about New York were suddenly like very shiny, very sweet, very like whatever, very like romanticized. And this felt like a very old school version of what New York is. And in that way, it's like such an interesting kind of period piece. So yeah, it's about this girl that like starts working in a porn cinema. I find the idea of porn cinema so interesting because it really is like blurring that line, right, between like the public and the private. So that is a thing that especially now we consider a very like private activity of consumption, right? That's something that you do quite secretly in like your room on your laptop. This is what I hear people do. Not me.
I like the way that before we were like euphemism, and you're just like straight up. Like, you know when you...
I actually don't do it. I don't know why I'm
Well,
acting
I mean,
like
a likely story.
They're around for a very long time because, I mean, it's very topical because rest in peace, Paul Rubens. He got kind of blacklisted a little bit because he was caught in a porn theatre, sort of, having fun.
And they are like a thing, right? And I find the idea that was how you used to consume porn really, really interesting. And it is also quite a cinematic thing. I think it's a plot point in The Pelican Brief of all films that like one of them is in like a porn cinema and someone gets assassinated. Spoilers for The Pelican Brief. But anyway, it's just like a very interesting kind of like locus. And I think especially the things that Bette Gordon is considering, which is this like act of like voyeurism and cinema's voyeurism. What does it mean to like look at and be looked at? And the fact that this stuff, which we think of as like very voyeuristic, very kind of private, like quite shame-filled thing, used to happen in like the public space. I think that's just like a really interesting investigation into that. I thought the main actress was really good, very, very vibey. Nan Goldin is in this as like a kind of bar server person. But was it actually at the bar that she used to work at? Like, was that where it was?
Her character's name is Nan.
And the character's name
So
is
it's
Nan.
like-
And she used to work in a bar. I think I remember that from All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. So it's just like very kind of, yeah. And I thought those scenes actually were really interesting. There's this really beautiful bit where she's talking to a sex worker and they're talking about how like they were basically entrapped by the police. And it's just very like, yeah, these kind of the underground of New York and the ways that it was exploited. That's really good. I found the business dealings, to go on to the business dealings, I found that a little bit more boring. Like, I kind of wish it stayed a little bit more in that kind of cinema space and these kind of workers. I did not get why she was so obsessed with this man. I thought he was quite boring. He did buy her a Diet Coke at one point, so actually maybe that would also work on me. But other than that, like, she is just kind of, and that's meant to kind of build a tension, but I actually found there was more tension within the very kind of like fabric of what she was doing, and the bits where she's kind of wandering around. You can like hear the porn films in the background, but no one is seeing or saying anything. There are also these fucking amazing scenes where her very straight-laced boyfriend is trying to play pinball for 10 full minutes, and she is just narrating porn at him, like deadpan, and that is iconic behavior, and I'm going to start doing that. So like that bit was like really, I like those bits. The bit with the businessman, I was like, why is this man here?
Yeah, I think you've like kind of identified something really right there, which is that this is fascinating for its like historicity, really, is that it's like capturing a moment in New York that doesn't exist anymore, but also it's still so prescient today. What you've described as working in a porno theater as a ticket taker being this kind of boundary between public and private. What was really interesting to me was to see that, like, for me personally, I wouldn't consider that sex work. I would consider it sex work adjacent. But in the way that her boyfriend is off-put and estranged by this, it leads you to understand that the patriarchy just views sex work adjacent as sex work.
Yeah.
And that's what brings her together with all these characters in these great little scenes where we're just like a fly on the wall in this bar, and it's someone who's like getting into the nitty gritty details of sex work, being like, well, you can, like, they say it in such like a normal, like natural way as well. It's like, oh, well, you can dance topless if you want, but if you don't want to dance topless, you can be in films. But if you're in films, you make a lot of money, but then they kind of control you. And it's like, I love that. The meme, the Gordon Ramsay meme, was like, finally some good fucking sex work discourse, except it's a film that's 40 years old, because you don't see stuff like that in films anymore as much, really. But like, yeah, the casualness with which like police brutality or misogyny is described means that it's not talking down to viewers, and it remains really prescient. The second half of the film is really dominated by this like intrigue, I guess, of her becoming the stalker of this businessman, of like this guy who's obviously trying to woo her, but he's keeping stuff from her, so she sort of like prowls after him, and the idea that she's inherited this boldness from the male gaze cultural artifact she's been exposed to. I think like there's an interesting thing there, but you're right, it probably did go on a little bit too long, and it started to feel maybe like there's like really like schlocky like pulp magazines that are all erotica, like, you know, ingenue moves to the big city and becomes sex queen or something like that. Like, it felt very much like there was some sort of transference of ideals happening because of the liminal space of the movie theater. But yeah, like I was more interested to see how she like really sort of like offhandedly describes the kind of films that she's seen at this theater to her boyfriend, and it's really impossible to discern his reaction. But yeah, the best part of the film by far is these like prolonged, really beautiful shots where she's just in her apartment by herself, checking her messages, having a beer, or like sitting with her friends. It embraces the kind of voyeurism of cinema. Like it allows you to just watch someone in their own space, and they don't have a place to be. They don't have anything dynamic going on. There's no men, there's no male gaze. And it's just like, I don't know, it's very realistic. It's very realism. Nan Golden's there. It's a great time. Also, Luis Guzman, who's the newest Gomez Adams, is there, and he's all right. He shows up for a bit.
Yeah, that is
he's
him.
like the co-worker at the movie theater. Yeah, Jose. Yeah, and he's kind of like a loudmouth, and like we don't really care about him as a character, but it's like a really interesting film. It's just all these faces, and they're just doing something that you don't get the chance to see in film very often, and yet despite the fact that it's such an artifact, it still feels incredibly relevant.
Yeah, I was reading that she was inspired by Vertigo and just other films where men get obsessed with women and follow them around. So like that was kind of part of the influence. Like she's following this man around for no reason other than she's become obsessed. But I kind of like those scenes because there's something really vibey about them, and also it was just really kind of funny because the guy is walking into all these kind of male only spaces. So the porn theater is men only, and all the men are really sort of. You'd think they'd be like perving at her, but actually they're just a little bit embarrassed that she's there because they're like coming out the theatre zipping at their flies and oh shit, there's a woman there. And they're like these men who go to porn because basically they can't talk to women, and as soon as they see her they get a bit like freaked out. But the guy she's following, I think he's called Lewis. He goes to sex shops. He goes to like the docks, to like a fish market, and there's all these men around, and she just kind of disrupts this space because she's not like interested in the men at all. She's interested in this one person she's following, and the men are just all confused about why this woman's here, and it's never sure if it was like street photography or something, because they're just like, she's walking through and all these men are just looking at her like startled. And I don't know if they're looking at her because they think there's a film happening. It's just quite unclear, but I just liked that kind of like the fact that she was so focused, and like, yeah, to see, and I guess like at the time it would have been quite radical just to follow a woman following a man. Like that's like so different from what we'd be seeing. And I guess like you're saying, those kind of grimy like New York films were all from men. Like, you know, it was all Abel Ferrara or Martin Scorsese, you know, like Taxi Driver's a good example. Like that's him watching people on the street. He actually goes to a porn theatre with Betty on a first date, you know, like, so it's like maybe making her version of that as well. So I found this amazing. I just thought it was so grimy and cool and
Had you seen it before, Jamie?
No, I just watched it last night and I was like gripped. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of Sylvia Plath had a quote, I can't remember it exactly, about how much she laments, the one thing she laments the most about living in a patriarchal society is her inability to just walk around and be places and see things happening, because where she lived at this particular time or growing up, and as well to a certain extent in many places in the world today, it's like women can't just walk around in these like seedy, dark places and just like observe what's going on and see what's happening and who's who. Like, it's something that you have to be incredibly conscious of if you're walking by yourself in New York in the 70s or the 80s and you're a woman. But this film, by having this kind of like atmosphere wherein the character seems completely disconnected from the setting around her, or indeed like the men, this is the one type of woman that the men don't want to stare at, a real life woman, a woman in front of them, that actually enables her in some kind of like supernatural way to just engage in this fantasy and like turn the tables on men and look at them. There's a great montage where it's just like men's hands shaking as they like conduct deals in like different parts of New York City, and we just see that while she's listening to this like sleep well hypnosis tape, and it's the idea that that the gaze being reflected back on them as opposed to where she works, which is the porno theater. Yeah.
Also agree the monologues were hilarious. Like, because that's the thing, the porn that we see glimpses of is so like tawdry, but her like monologues are so right, but like totally like Victorian, like, or not Victorian, like a sort of medieval or something. Like, it's all about like snakes and like I mean, bodices being ripped. It's
her
like
character's like meant to be a writer, so I wondered if that was meant to be not her summarizing the films she's seen, but like taking what she'd seen in these films to influence her writing, and was like presenting erotica to her boyfriend for his
so dispassionately.
Yeah, like he didn't. So, like... He's just playing pinball. He's like, we don't even know if they're still together at this point. For all we know, they've broken up, and she just follows him around, just relaying like romantic stories to him.
But there's also like a close up of like 2 minutes on his arse as he just bangs this pinball machine as well. So again, it's like the female gaze is like just employed in a very interesting way. So yeah, it's cool.
So Variety is on the 20th of August, Sunday at 2:20 p.m. at the Omni Centre. So go and check it out. It's very good. I've not watched it, but everyone else seems to enjoy it.
I will say it's also coming to GFT after it plays at EIFF, so you can see it if you're not through in Edinburgh.
Excellent. One for people in Glasgow. Okay, so that's 3 good ones so far. Now for the 4th one. So Afire is the new film from Christian Petzold, where a sad sack writer named Leon heads with his friend Felix to a holiday home by the Baltic Sea. He's looking for peace and quiet to finish his second novel. Felix is looking for the chance to work on his art school portfolio. When they arrive, the place is double booked, and Nadia is living there. She's kind of carefree woman who works in the town nearby, and she's shacked up with the local lifeguard David. Leon is miserable with the situation. Everyone else is getting on like a house on fire. Meanwhile, there is a literal fire raging in the mid-distance as forest fires are slowly engulfing this bit of Germany. Thomas Schubert plays Leon, Paula Beer, Langston Weeble, and Enno Trebs are also in it. Jamie, I believe you liked this film. Go on. Tell me why. I
did like it. I thought it was really engrossing and very funny and quite unlike Petzold. Like, it's quite different from all his films. I think Thomas Schubert is like hilarious. He plays this kind of grumpy, miserable writer who basically just doesn't know how to have fun. He's in this kind of beautiful forest with these beautiful people who are drinking wine and eating delicious goulash and like having sex with each other. And he's just there like behind his laptop, grumpy, pretending to write this great masterpiece and thinking he's above it all. But of course, he's insanely jealous and annoyed that he's not at the centre of attention. So it's a film that's centred around a narcissistic dickhead, basically, who's petty and envious and pretentious and an utter snob. But the joy of the film is just seeing him be incredibly uncomfortable. And I think there's something about Schubert's, like, as an actor, he's just incredibly likeable, despite playing this dick. So part of it is I think is actually his physicality. He doesn't. He looks like a writer, he looks like he's pale, he's a bit chunky, he's wearing like ill-fitting clothes. He's always like wearing his...
all writers do.
How many times have I said this? We're professional journalists.
Well, if you spend all your day at a typewriter, you're not going to be like suntanned and buff, are you?
I'm suntanned. I left.
If you spend,
you're the exception. Have you not seen?
And also, if you spend all your days at a typewriter, you'd have really, really strong wrists.
Yeah.
Strong fingers, muscular fingers.
It's ripping a pineapple in half.
But you know what I mean? He's like he's just really uncomfortable. He's always wearing his like jacket. He's in the beach and he's wearing a shirt and a jacket, and everybody else is walking around their like, bathing suit, and he just feels uncomfortable. It's like but there's something like warm about him as well. Like this, the fact that you feel sorry for him a little bit, even though he is an absolute arsehole. So it's a kind of cringe comedy in a way that muses on creation. It muses on like that, the creative process. Leon is trying to write this novel called Club Sandwich, and there's a suggestion that it's not very good, and Leon probably knows it's not good, and there's a total cringeworthy scene where his editor comes to visit and starts reading it out, and it's just bad. So it plays with that. It plays with that idea of like, you're a writer who's made a good book, and then what happens when you can't write a second one, and then so if he doesn't have writing, what else has he got? Because he can't like have fun either. And he's just like stuck in this situation where he doesn't know what to do. So yeah, I found it very appealing. Also, it's just full of like good Petzold kind of in-jokes, like, the book he's writing is called Club Sandwich, and Petzold's second film was called Cuba Libre, which is a little kind of similar, but also that was a flop, So he said like, he didn't know what he was doing with his second film. It was really bad. So I think he's a little bit of himself in that character. I think it's kind of a little bit autobiographical, I would imagine.
So I thought this film had some good points. It's very summery. The cinematography is lovely, and all of the performances are really, really good. The problem I had with this film is that it kind of didn't do enough of any of the individual things that it was trying to do. So all sort of like melded together. Like, this guy is a BAM. Right, you tell me that, look at this guy who is really down and a bit depressed and obsessed with his work and a bit snide to people. You tell me that's what the film's about, and this is the guy you bring me. This guy is insufficiently a BAM. I'm gesticulating wildly, but it's not being picked up on the audio. Like, maybe I'm just used to your kind of like, to British cringe comedy, where it's your people like your Mark Corrigans, your Alan Partridges, where it's the person is so irredeemable as a shitbag that I'm like, that is the standard that I set for somebody who goes into social situations and makes things catastrophically awkward and then leaves without solving anything. The kind of one of the main kind of like inciting incidents for like a bit of drama in the film, is that they're having a conversation and Leon's just being a bit snide to David about being a lifeguard, but not in a particularly like abrasive way. And then Felix is like, "That's enough. You've said, leave the poor boy alone." And I'm like, if this is what you think getting a slag in is, then I'm really sorry, but like, you have a lot to learn, my friend. I felt like it was just a film that kind of hedged its bets a bit. Like, there is kind of social tension in the group, and there's like sexual tension in the group, and there's environmental tension between like what's going on in the house and what's going on outside. But there's not enough of any of it for it to actually be tense, I didn't feel. I felt that like they kept breaking the sexual tension by having sex with each other. Like, this is not helping me enjoy the film.
But the key is...
You would never never go to the cinema for variety.
But the key is no one's having sex with Leon. That's the point.
That is true, but then he's not enough of a dick about it for it to be a problem. And then, at the end, it smashes the massive jarring tonal shift button so hard that, like, you can hear a ba-jumph and, like, bits of plastic flying everywhere. Like, the tonal, like... Vin Diesel would be proud of the gear shift and sudden acceleration that this film puts in.
Well,
My God.
Well, you know, but the thing is, the film is full of those tonal shifts. Well, like, there's little plot twists that happen, and the reason that happens is because it's all from Leon's point of view. So Leon is this guy who's a writer, right, who sits back and observes the world, but he's really bad at observing the world. Like, he doesn't see what's going on around him. For example, his friend Felix is gay, obviously, and we all know that. Everyone knows that apart from him until he starts shagging David. Like, it's just like, so like, he's like, but he seems shocked. Like, the guy tried to pick you up like 5 minutes earlier. You know, he's just a guy who's oblivious. So Pauline Bear's character obviously fancies Leon. Leon has no clue that this is going on. You know, just like, he's just oblivious. And that's kind of what the film does. It makes everyone else oblivious. So you get this fire happening in the background that no one can see is coming, or Leon certainly can't see. And then when it arrives, pigs are on fire, you know, like that's how it happens. And I think it's, you know, it's clearly a metaphor for the world. Like, we have this kind of catastrophe round about us and we're too concerned with our own little, you know, podcasts or books or whatever, you know.
Don't say books and wave at me. What have I done?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about Leon's book. But you know what I mean? It's like, it's a film where, like, it is like a bit catastrophe, and these people are just too busy having a nice summer holiday to notice, you know. And I think that's, you know, it's sort of, to me, pointing towards the world.
You'd think if it was a film about a socially awkward writer who constantly misses things that people are saying, I would love it, but it turns out not so much. Lewis, you were about to say something before I decided to be pithy.
Well, I'm also going to be pithy, even though I've not seen the film. I'm just jumping on the bandwagon. I love to kick it when it's down. But yeah, like I would have thought that, like, if it's a film that's about this sort of, like, this environmental fallacy of, like, the world's burning around people and they're too busy caught up in their own bullshit to notice, I think that metaphor doesn't exactly work, because I think that a big problem with, like, climate disaster is that the people who are not paying attention are ones who have actual, like, it's bad because the people who are not doing anything about it are in positions where they could make change. I don't blame myself for climate change, really. I think if I could do something more about it, I would.
I think that, like, all responsible. Anyway,
I think we're all responsible in a way, but it's like, yeah, it doesn't particularly sound appealing to me in a film about someone who's just kind of bad at their job, and for unrelated reasons, everything goes all fucked up. He's
bad at his job and he's bad at life. But in my but in my mind, insufficiently so to grab my interest.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was very funny, and I agree that maybe the ending doesn't all tie together perfectly, but I found it really enjoyable.
Well, sometimes on these things, much like in the film Afire, you just have to agree to disagree. And we'll just see which of us, redacted spoiler for the ending of Afire. That doesn't really work as a sign-off, so I'll just do another one.
No.
Well, we'll leave that in. Right.
So, in the courage of your conviction.
Yeah, stand by your stupid decisions. So Afire is on at the Omni Centre View on the 22nd of August, which is the Tuesday at 6:30. The 6:15 one is sold out, so clearly people think this sounds like a good film. And it's also on Wednesday the 23rd at 2 p.m.
I can also just say I saw this in New York. I don't know if I mentioned I've been to New York.
Good
but and Christian Petzold did a Q&A, and just go for his Q&A because he is hilarious. Like,
really?
Like you wouldn't think it, because like I had just seen his earlier films and they're all about like Germany's history, and they're all really bleak and tragic, but he is a riot, and he tells some very funny stories. And the funny thing about it is he had a translator with him, and the translator did not say a word. He comes on and says, "Oh yeah, my English is terrible," and then he just proceeds to tell these amazing, like, you know, just a raconteur. He tells amazing anecdotes about like Abbas Kiarostami and like the shoot and stuff like that. He's a very good listen. So if he's doing a Q&A, turn up and go to it.
Good stuff. So that's a partial recommendation for Afire. Good job, everybody. So before we go, let's briefly recommend some more things that we haven't necessarily seen but sound good. Again, professional podcasters, professional film journalists, having a great time out here on the pod. So who wants to go first and recommend something from the programme?
I can go first so that the one film that I've seen someone else won't steal. But Passages, which is the new, speaking of Christian Petzold, his often collaborator, Franz Rogowski, has a new film. It's a very sexy, very, not silly, but like these people are making bad decisions, you know? Like just like non-stop, wall-to-wall bad choices. Starring, Franz Rogowski, Ben Whishaw, and Adele Exarchopoulos. And they are in a very horny, weird little threesome love triangle situation. And it's really sexy, really good. He wears a lot of crochet. I want to wear crochet.
Oh my God, the outfits are fantastic.
The outfits are so good. Everyone looks hot. Everyone's having a lot of sex. They probably shouldn't be. It's not going well for them, but they are doing it. They're committing. So that's really fun. And then I'm also really excited by Kelly Reichardt's Showing Up, which like sees her reunited with Michelle Williams and is just about like kind of art and making art and creativity. And yeah, sounds very like on point for all of us.
I was going to mention the Kelly Reichardt one,
sorry.
but now that we have, we can move on to Lewis.
Oh no! Do you want to cut my bit and then you can do it?
No, that won't be necessary.
Okay.
Except to add that Andre 3000 is also in the Kelly Reichardt film.
There we go.
Teamwork. Lewis, go.
I mean, I've not seen any other of the films in the festival, but there's some that I'm interested in seeing. There's like Chuck Chuck Baby, which is about a woman who works at a chicken packaging factory, and like her childhood love comes back to town, and they kind of like, I don't know, they like sort of unite the big working class community with their I don't know, their like rekindled romance, which just sounds like a lot of fun. There's a lot of animated films that I want to see as well. I'm looking at the program now. Scrolling. Oh, it's so long. I probably should have done this in advance, really.
Jamie, do you want to go while Lewis keeps
Well,
scrolling?
there's Art Film 99 or 1994, I think, which is over near the front, if that's one of them, and also the first Slam Dunk. So it's in alphabetical.
You were talking about the first Slam Dunk earlier, yeah.
If that helps finding.
Yeah, I mean, they all look interesting. There's loads of I always try and check out animated films at film festivals just because I know a bunch of animators. But yeah, I mean, like, first Slam Dunk seems interesting. There's a list of short films, short animated films, which also seems cool. Sorry, I should have been more prepared. This is my fault.
It's all right. We're all doing a fantastic job. Jamie, bring it home.
Well, I was going to say Passage as well, but since Annie's done such a great job of plugging it,
Thanks.
but I will say very hot, very sexy. Yeah. Whew.
Yep.
But yeah, I think I've just got really into the retrospectives of it. So I loved variety. So I'm going to also shout out to the retrospectives. There's Tokyo Pop, which is by Fran Rubel Kurzu. This is a film about, it's a New York City punk meets a Tokyo rocker. What I'm interested in is she is the director of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie, which is a film I've always had a huge fondness for. And obviously it got eclipsed by the huge TV show that it spawned. But the film is great, and I am looking forward to, I didn't know she'd actually made any more films, and I'm looking forward to this one. This looks a bit more kind of like obviously underground and interesting. There's also one called Life is Cheap, Toilet Paper is Expensive. Really great name. It's from the independent filmmaker Wayne Wang, who is probably most famous for the Joy Luck Club, but he also made Smoke as well. Really amazing Asian American sort of pioneering filmmaker. This is kind of set in the kind of pre-Hong Kong handover era. Looks really cool. Both of them look fantastic. I'm also kind of intrigued by Kill, which is one of the Scottish films. It's a world premiere. It's about three sons who like try and kill their father in the woods. It just looks like a really kind of nifty little thriller, kind of like maybe Deliverance vibes I'm getting from it. But that's sight unseen. I haven't seen it, but it looks cool. So
those are all good recommendations. You can find out more about all of those and get tickets for any of them or all of them if you want to at EIFF.co.uk. And I think that is us covered the Edinburgh Film Festival.
Yes.
We've done it.
We have.
Successfully. No blips. No gaffs.
Smooth as hell.
No gaffs.
No
smooth.
editing.
Yeah, smooth as butter. This thing's just going straight on the internet.
why do we just live stream these? That's just perfect as they are.
And on that note, so thank you to EHFM for having us again. Thanks for Jamie for getting us set up. ehfm.live. Listen to the only good radio station. It's very good. speaking of passages, we have some tickets left for the free screenings that we're doing in Glasgow and Edinburgh in September. You can get those at theskinny.co.uk/tickets. Thank you, Lewis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anahit.
Thank you.
Cheers, Jamie.
Just beer.
And thanks from me. Thank you all for listening. Please do tell people that this podcast is very good, very professional, and incredibly serious. Bye, everybody.
Bye.